Welcome to the Terry Leadership Speaker Series. This is presented by the Institute for Leadership Advancement through the Terry College of Business at the University of Georgia. My name is Brittany Young. I'm a senior Leonard Leadership Scholar and Foundation Fellow studying finance and international business. The Institute for Leadership Advancement has been providing student-focused, values-based leadership development training and education to undergraduate and graduate students for the past 10 years. Today, the Institute for Leadership Advancement has brought us two impressive speakers that I had the pleasure of meeting earlier this morning. At this point, my fellow Leonard Leadership Scholar, Grant Carlton, will introduce them.
Good morning. My name is Grant Carlton, and I'm a fourth-year marketing and management major here in Terry. This morning, I have the pleasure to introduce to you our two leadership speakers, starting with Mr. Douglas Oberhelman, CEO. Mr. Douglas Oberhelman, CEO and chairman of the board of Caterpillar, Inc., the world's leading manufacturer of construction and mining equipment. Since joining Caterpillar from Millikan University in 1975, Mr. Oberhelman has held numerous positions in marketing and finance all over the world. Elected CEO and chairman of the board in 2010, Mr. Oberhelman has led Caterpillar to record-breaking financial success. Our second speaker is Mr. Kent Adams, Vice President of Caterpillar, Inc. and President of Caterpillar Financial since 2005. Mr. Adams joined Caterpillar in 1979 with a BBA and master's from Illinois University and has since completed an executive management program with Penn State. I had an opportunity to meet both of these men this morning, and all I can say is we're in for a treat. Please welcome Mr. Douglas Oberhelman and Mr. Kent Adams.
Well, thank you, and Doug and I are looking forward to doing this. Now, just to manage expectations, we don't do this every Friday.
In a church, no
In a
less.
church, that's right. I do like the idea of Kent Oberhelman, though. It sounded good, had a nice ring. But we're here to talk about leadership a little bit, and we're going to enjoy this and then take some questions from the students. So, Doug, let's get started. People are always interested when they see, we get a chance to meet a chairman or a CEO, sort of how you got started. And so I'm going to ask you, and Doug and I are going to ask each other some questions. So I'm going to ask you, Doug, when you started at CAT, sort of how did you get started? How did you come to Caterpillar? And what were your aspirations when you first got started?
Yeah, well, thank you, Ken. And first of all, I'll just say I'm thrilled to be here in Georgia. I'm thrilled to be here in Athens at University of Georgia. As you know, we're constructing a small little branch outside of town here, and I'm quite proud of that. That's a factory that will employ about 1,400 people when it's finished in about a year and a half. It'll make our small bulldozer line, D3, D4, D5, and our small excavator line, 3 to 8 ton machines that are all made today in Japan. And we moved that factory from essentially Sagamihara, Japan, outside Tokyo, to Athens, Georgia. The market's here in the United States. There'll be some export, and it's really, I think, an endorsement of what Caterpillar can do, but again, America can be competitive, and we've talked a lot about that, and I'll probably come back to that. So I'm very proud of Georgia. We've had great relations with the community leaders, some of whom are here, with Governor Deal to put this together, and I've been very, very proud of the relationship we have with Georgia. How I started was not unlike all of you that are students or got started. I walked right out of college, 4-year undergraduate in finance, thought I knew everything, ready to go and run the company, be the chairman of the board. And I landed in Peoria, which was I had never been in Peoria, Illinois in my life, about 90 miles from where I went to school, and sat down as a credit analyst, and it turned out to be a 1-year job, and it turned out to be, in my 37 years of history, the worst job I had. And I couldn't wait for it to end. It was a training job, and I got through it, and it was fine. But it led to my second job, which was a job in trading foreign exchange and currencies. And in 1975, the dollar had just recently floated. Currencies were fairly new, so it was great fun. I'm aging myself here for everyone, but The gold standard had been freed not too many years before that, so a lot of things had happened around finance, and I felt like I was in the middle of it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I had great aspirations, and those were to pay off my car and pay off my student loans. And that's all I thought I would get done. That's really, at 22 years old, was heavy on my mind because I didn't have a lot of support, any support for that matter, from my parents who were very working class people. My dad was a John Deere salesman, for example. And when I went to work for CAT, there was a little interesting set of discussions, but we still get along fine to this day. And I'm probably the only one that gives his dad John Deere or CAT stuff, and he gives me John Deere stuff at Christmas time to this day. So we trade barbs all the time. I had no aspiration. I didn't really understand probably what a CEO was or a chairman was. And I moved, as Grant said, I moved all over the world and been everywhere. And as I rose in the ranks at CAT, I was very lucky with my career and I've lived in 3 continents, and I've just cherished that beyond belief. It helped me more than anything. And then when I guess when I arrived in the executive office, which is the kind of the CEO and the next level down, there's 6 of us and have been about 6 of us 11 years ago, that's when I started to think, boy, this is kind of fun up here at this level. And one thing led to another, and then here I am. A couple of years, almost 3 years ago, in fact 3 years ago next month, we made the announcement that I would become CEO and chairman, and that was one of the great, I'll tell a little story on that one. We had, my predecessor is a great guy, and I knew very well, we all did, liked and respected, and we knew that transition was coming. Of course, in a big company, little company, you know, all these things, there are things going around, people get nervous and talk about this, rumors go around all over the place. So every board meeting in 2009, we sort of thought maybe this is it. It wasn't. So the October board meeting of 2009 came and went. Nothing happened. We all went home after the meeting and said, well, it's probably going to be later, no problem. And 4 days later, it was a Saturday morning, I received an email from my boss, the CEO at the time, about 9 o'clock on a Friday night, which is somewhat unusual. And he said, Doug, we've got to meet over the weekend over a really tough personnel issue. Because I had personnel at the time in HR, and I thought, oh boy, they're never fun. I thought this will be a nice weekend. So I was gone, he was gone, we couldn't match up. He wanted to do it face to face. So 6 a.m. Saturday morning, the phone rings, and I was up. I typically get up and was reading the paper, and I thought, boy, that's strange. And I picked up the phone, and it's Jim. And I said, hey Jim, how you doing? He said, well, it's a little urgent. I got to talk to you. And then he said, we'd like you to be chairman and CEO of the company. It's a moment I will never forget in my life. It was really outstanding. But certainly I didn't start like all of you at 22 years old going to work thinking this is where I was going to end up. But I'm very lucky in my career. So I guess I get to ask you a couple questions.
You can.
And which is always fun because I don't usually get to do this with the moderator. You know, he always pins me down and I can't do it back. But Kent's had several, I guess, legacy through here at University of Georgia. I'm looking for the Adams School of something shortly, and I'll see that the next time I come, Dean, so there you go. I'll tee you up on that. But
I gave Doug some questions, and that wasn't one of them.
But, you know, I've known Kent since the day he walked into Caterpillar in 1979, and we've been around each other's career for all these 30 years, and similarly in finance at the same time. And Kent's risen to be in charge of our finance company, which is a $35 billion in asset finance company, leading all other finance company in industrial goods, hugely successful and managing risk, a big job. It's a banking job. It's a finance job, a classic banking and finance job. And through the downturn in 09, 08, 09, 010, Kent was the leader of that. And he will say that it's a great team, and it is, but he was the leader through a very tough time. And we didn't lose money. We didn't have any extreme blow-ups in our finance company like so many banks did and other financial institutions, like at GM, that you've all probably read about or know about. How'd you do that? I know it was around the team you had there.
I'll answer your question, but I'm going to hit on something that Doug said that I hope everybody, the students, heard. You know, Doug mentioned luck in his comment about his career. And I know when I've met with different people, they always ask about the career. And the reality is luck is a part of it.
It is.
you obviously need to work hard, you need to do a good job, think about the future, prepare yourself, but there's aspects of your career you can't control, in terms of the opportunities you're given, the people you work for, and I think as a new student starting out, you need to understand, or try to understand, you got to catch some breaks and have some luck. And if you don't, you can kind of drive yourself crazy. If you think, you can control every single aspect of every part of your career, you aren't. And I think you said
No,
luck,
it's a good,
luck a few times.
it's a good point, and timing.
Timing is
The
really
luck
important.
of timing and events or openings for jobs or companies that become available or whatever it is a part of that. But I also believe firmly, and I know you do, that you are a big maker of your own luck.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so that's a key piece. But get back to the
All
question.
right. So Doug asked me about 2008 and 9 and 10 and sort of how we managed through that. And just to set the stage, Doug mentioned we're a finance company, an insurance company, and basically we borrow money, we lend money. And if you recall back to late 2008, the financial markets froze, and it was a big deal. Because without cash, it's very tough for any company to operate. And there were moments, and I'm going to say it was my team, there were moments in the early days we weren't sure just how we were going to manage through it. And there were, and I'll remember, it's interesting, Doug, he remembers at a certain point. I remember a night that I was in a small conference room with our CFO and our controller, Jim Dunsing and Steve Elsesser, and the three of us were sitting there and trying to sort out sort of what we were going to do, and we decided, we need to sort of get through tomorrow. It's almost like preparing for a final, right? You've got to get through the next day, and then we're going to think about how we're going to get through the longer term. Mm-hmm. And so we sat back and said, all right, so what do we need to do to get through the next 2 to 3 to 6 months? And then once we get through that 6-month period, we can think about our basic business model, and is it a model that we can really make successful? So we really broke down and kind of thought through it. And then we really started to communicate to the rest of the organization. And frankly, we had employee meetings because we're in the finance area and employees are smart and they understand how our business works. And I had one of our brand new employees, and frankly, they're the least politically correct. And so they know the questions to ask. And so we're in a meeting of about 150 people. And a young lady stood up and said, Kent, so are we still going to be in business next year? And it was about as quiet as this room is right here. And we were very transparent. I said, look, here's the situation. We've got this issue with the capital markets. Here's what we're doing to work through it. And we're going to work through these issues, and then we're going to work long term. And it really was a team effort because you sit back and you have to ask, okay, what are the pieces we need to work on? What do we need to resolve? And if when we get through those, we'll be in good shape. Because we knew we could manage downturns. I mean, we've managed downturns all through our careers. The business is fairly cyclical. We've got great opportunities on the upside. We might have managed to the downside. But this was clearly different.
Yeah.
And we had to sit back and sort out as a group. So how are we going to work through what's important, what businesses are key to our business, which ones are less key, and really how do we make this business go forward in the future?
Yeah, for those of you that were, some of you seniors, maybe juniors and seniors, remember probably studying some of this. It'll be a case study for many, many years to come, but literally the credit world stopped for 2 days in late '08. It stopped. Kent couldn't borrow at Cat Financial. We couldn't borrow at Caterpillar Incorporated. We had a rock-solid balance sheet. We could not come up with cash if we wanted to. And we watched our business shrink from $52 billion in sales, top line, in 2008 to $32 billion in sales the next year. And most of that happened in the first half of the year of 2009. And that reminded me of one of my experiences when I lived in South America in Uruguay in 1981. I was moved down there to clean up a mess after the great Latin American debt bomb of the late 70s, the petrodollar recycling when oil went to $35 the first time. A lot of free money washed around, cheap money washed around the world and ended up in places it shouldn't have. Does it sound familiar? This was 1980. And I literally watched businesses and friends and cities and governments and countries lose everything in Latin America. And this was shades of that coming to our country here in the United States. It was really a pretty tough time, but we got through it, and the finance company for us was kind of the lightning rod and the target of so much of things that were going bad. You know, GM went bankrupt, so spun off their credit company. GE couldn't borrow, they got downgraded and blah, blah, and you all know the story of all the finance companies and banks. We came through that, and it was Kent and that team that got it done. We're pretty proud of that, and I'm really proud of that, Kent. But go back to kind of your career and how you guys did. Kent came as a smart person. See, I came with an undergraduate degree. Kent came with about 4 degrees and masters and all this stuff, and well, I always say he taught me everything I know, but he knows better.
That's not true. I won't take too long, but the aspect of me being smart is way overstated. You know, I was really fortunate to come to work at CAT, and in fact, you know, my mother was a school teacher, and she would tell Donna what a problem student I was. And after my mother passed away, you know, you're going through family stuff, and Donna came across my grade school report cards. And she said, you know, thank God I didn't see these before, because I never would have shown them to the kids. Yeah. You know, Doug mentioned luck. I'll try to be too long. And you might, if I don't know this, I interviewed with CAT in 1976 as an undergrad, and the job market was tight. And much like we do today, they do a sort of a 30-minute review and decide whether they want to bring me into the company or not. And I failed the on-campus interview, and they turned me down. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I obviously didn't know
So
that.
I couldn't get a job. No, you know, so I basically couldn't get a job, and so I was fortunate enough that the associate dean at the University of Illinois, the business school there, helped me get into grad school. And it was super because I grew up. Mm-hmm. A couple of years of maturing made a big, big difference when I went to work. And I don't think it was so much the technical work. It was more just being ready to go to work, being 2 years older. And then I went to work for CAT and really didn't have any big plans to go to CAT. Again, I was kind of lucky. Harvey Massimore, who Doug knows was our pension fund manager, was a friend of my dad's, and just asked what his son was up to. And my dad said, well, he's finally decided he's going to look for a job and get out of school. And he asked what my degree was in, and he told him, so he should send me his resume. And after I'd already been turned down once, I thought, well, maybe they'll give me an interview. I can get this practice a little bit before I go somewhere else. And got a job with CAT and have been really lucky ever since. And I absolutely, same comment as Doug, I've caught a lot of breaks in my career where other people have turned jobs down and just took advantage of it. And then
yeah, maybe that's something we should talk about a little bit. In that, I'm asked this often by young people or new people to CAT, not necessarily young. But what would you recommend to me to get ahead, to get to your job? What should I do? And I have a pretty simple answer to that, and I've thought about this a lot in the early days as I got to this answer, but it really comes down to ambition. And if you look at a starting group that comes to our company in any discipline, marketing, finance, engineering, manufacturing, you name it, everybody in that group is relatively of the same intelligence. Because we have a minimum grade point, we've got all the things you have to get through the process. So virtually everybody is of the same mind, and very talented, very good, lots of potential. But what separates those that really go a long way in life and business or whatever endeavor, and those that don't? And I sometimes liken it to the high school class where there's always one person in high school raising their hand answering questions and everybody else gets so fed up with them. But chances are that kid's probably the valedictorian, and later on you'll see him as an Eagle Scout or was an Eagle Scout and on and on. He or she does well down the road, and it's no different in our company. Volunteering for extra projects, extra work. Being very careful in taking the jobs that are offered to you, because if you don't take a key job, somebody else will, and they'll just go around you. You can be the best person for the future, but if somebody else has the experience and I have to choose, chances are the experience is going to win out. So I really think it comes down to ambition in the end, not raw political, hard-elbowed ambition. In our company, there's some of that always everywhere, but it's just who really wants to help us get things done and go where we want to go.
I'm going to pile on to what Doug said. Doug, I was asked one day by one of our brand new employee or an intern, and so that he asked me, so what books do you read to get ahead? And you know, it's the ambition aspect, but particularly I think as a brand new employee. And I have a side of me that can be kind of a smart aleck at times. And I said I wouldn't give a shout out to my daughter, so I won't do that, but she could confirm that. So anyway, I said, hey, here's the books I read. Real men do yoga. Eat this, not that. How to speak to anyone, and dress for success. And he kind of looked at me and I said, look, you got to take care of yourself. And so exercise and diet, they make a difference. You need to dress right. And so you sort that out. And you got to be able to talk to people. You think about when we hire somebody, as Doug said, we know you're smart and we know you're technically competent. We want to make sure you can work on a team. We want to make sure when we send you out as an employee, we want to make sure you're properly dressed. You've got to have good etiquette. You've got to take care of yourself. All of us, or many of us, have a pretty serious exercise regime so we can take care of ourselves. And to me, as a brand new employee, you have to get those aspects right. Because if you can't take care of yourself, if you don't know how to talk or speak and present, if you don't dress appropriately, it's going to be a real derailer for your career long term.
Yeah, it's amazing to me, and I'm sure, Dean, you teach this these days, how many new people we get in our company that can't make a presentation or are intimidated or afraid or just have never done it. And in this day and age, a presentation, whether it's on an iPad or one-on-one or to a group, is bottom line. It's the 3.25 or 3.5 grade point. You got to do it. And I'm kind of amazed about that. And of course, the other thing we're losing as a society are writing skills, which I think when you receive a written letter from somebody, and in school you don't do that often or write to someone, but you will, I guarantee it, in your future. And you receive a well-written letter or you read a well-written piece, you'll be impressed because it's so rare these days. And that is a differentiator, in my opinion, in your own brand and in what you can do in the future. And when you recognize it, you'll know it because we're losing it to these fingertip things.
Hey, Doug, people, particularly a lot of the new employees, ask about work-life balance. I'm going to ask you that a little different. Describe what a Monday is like for you in terms of sort of what time you get up, what you do, and then describe a Saturday. Because I think that maybe resonates kind of what your life is like and how you balance things.
That's a good way to ask that, actually. Mondays are my favorite day, without question, for a lot of reasons. But we meet as an executive office, that is, the 5-group.
Start in the morning. What time do you get up in the morning?
Oh, okay. I get up every day at 5:30.
Okay.
And I do religiously 2 miles every morning. Either right now I can be outside because the weather's nice, or on the treadmill religiously when I have time, and that's 4 to 5 days a week I can get that in. I need to do that. And then I'll have breakfast with my wife, who's my absolute soulmate of all time anyway, and we'll read 2 papers at that time, generally the local paper, and scan the Wall Street, and then I leave at about 7 o'clock. And if this sounds like a routine, it is. Sorry about that. And I try to get in by about 7:15. But Monday mornings at 8 o'clock for an hour and a half, we have our executive office roundtable, we call it, unstructured. The 6 of us, 5-group presidents and myself, and we update each of us on the previous week's events. And right now it's all, of course, economic situation, worldwide sales situation for us. What's happening in China is a big thing right now for us. So next Monday, and then once a month, off the track a little bit, once a month we have an all-day meeting, which is next Monday. And we'll cover lots of things during a full day to make decisions, but normally it's just an hour and a half as an update. Maybe I'll probably talk about this on Monday. I'm going out to do some touring, and I'll talk about that. Or I met with customers earlier in the week, and this and that. A lot of information right now about Europe and overall worldwide. We're looking for any upturn or downturn or anything that we ought to be monitoring right now to adjust either production levels or up or down or whatever else we may do. So that's really fun. And it's unstructured, and everybody has their little bullet points, and we talk through that.
Do you have any open time on a Monday?
No, I never have open time on a Monday.
Talk about a Saturday. What's a Saturday like?
I never have open time during the whole Monday through Friday. And that's one thing about a CEO job, and probably a lot of jobs for that matter, but is the calendar, what we call calendar hell. And it's amazing. And I was warned about it by other CEOs I knew. I was warned about it by my predecessors, but it is true. And I could literally work 48 hours a day, and I get requests for 48 hours a day. And 48 hours a day because the 12 you're not at work is travel, and I could go every single day. But I enjoy that, and it's fun, and everything is different, so different. I've had a big push in my time here on customer contact and customer visits and trying to change our company to be more customer receptive, and that's been fun. And I was with Paul Ryan's family last week in Janesville, Wisconsin, for example, the night he gave the acceptance speech, and everybody in the room was just excited about Paul, Congressman Ryan, giving his speech that night. So I really love that. But anyway, Saturdays, I'm not a workaholic, and I'll spend, at some point Saturday, enough time on my iPad to be current, figure out everything that's going on, catch up, get that out of the way. And I'll do a little bit of that Sunday morning. But tomorrow, Saturday, is the opening day of teal season in Illinois, which is a duck season, so I'm a big duck hunter, and I'm doing that. I have my 2 Georgia dogs. They're not bulldogs, but they are black labs that lived in Thomasville for 2 years for training. One's named Diesel and one named Dozer, and they're the 2 of them and I are going hunting tomorrow morning, and I can't wait. And so that's in the fall. We try to do a lot of that, but I try not to get. I try not to do office time on the weekends. I have to, but I try not to. I don't do. I'm just not a workaholic on the weekends. I feel by Monday morning I'm recharged. I better be ready to go, and I let it all happen during the week. And the trips, of course, it's always 7 a.m. until 10 at night. Usually a foreign trip will be 10 or 12 days. I try to limit it to 12 days because after that, with jet lag, your productivity really drops. I've got a trip to China next week. We'll have our board meeting over there. And then in November, I've got a trip to Peru and Brazil, both customer visits, which I'm really extremely looking forward to.
You know, Doug, we were going to turn over for student questions. Doug mentioned his wife, and my wife is here also, and we have an employee session every month, a birthday session, and we introduce ourselves and talk about the company. And one of those employees one day said, "I have an awesome wife." And ever since, I've practiced saying in front of people, "I have an awesome wife." And I tell people, so I do that, and when you come to the holiday party, please come up and tell Donna that Kent said you're an awesome wife. Because, it takes 10 attaboys to wipe out an oh crud. And I'm good on the oh crud side. So with 400 people here today, it'd be great if you all would line up and said, "Hey, I heard that, Donna, you're an awesome wife." So that's the way to go.
But there's some seriousness to that around leadership too, and I think a spouse, a partner, a friend is, as you go forward in your careers, no matter what it is absolutely critical. And in my case, this is my second time, and I got it really perfect the second time, and it's helped me immensely with my day job. And I had to kind of learn it the hard way, I guess. Absolutely. But if I had everything to do over again, I'd do 2 different things. One, I'd get a master's degree very early after my undergraduate. I wish, as a personal thing, I would have done that. I don't think it would have helped my career that much, but it's a personal thing. And second, I would have tried to really work on a relationship, because that is critical at night and your off time to be able to absolutely deeply relate on all levels. And I've learned that later in life, hopefully not late in life, but it's really been critical, and that's a piece of advice that I always try to pass along to people. It's hard to imagine that in college and when you're in your 20s, but it will come around you sooner than you can imagine. But
That's a fact. Okay, with that.
Questions?
We have time for 2 student questions. Ms. Courtney Aldrich with the Office of ILA will come around with a mic and take care of the questions. So what questions do we have?
I've already got one, so I'll go ahead. I'm Brian Baker. I'm a 3rd year here, risk management and insurance major. And I just want to thank you, first of all, for being here. It's not every Friday that we have such an honor. And I actually interned at Cat Financial this past summer, and I could see how Caterpillar is really a values-driven company from top to bottom, and you could really see it all over the place in emails, and it consumed the walls with posters, everything like that. So my question for you is, it's 2-part. First of all, which of your personal values have really helped you the most in gaining those leadership positions throughout your career, and what current personal value has served you best in those leadership roles?
Yeah, I think for me, there's the absolute answer for me is around personal accountability. And one of the things that I've tried to bring to Caterpillar is no matter what level you are, no matter what job you are on, you own the results and it's your company. And big companies get lost on that. Big companies get lost and want other people to do the job and think another department's going to do it, but when it comes right down to it, it's no different than the corner hardware store. If you owned a corner hardware store and you had Walmart coming in 6 months' time and you knew it, you'd treat every customer that walks through that door like a golden ring. You'd answer every phone call on the first ring. You'd answer every email. You'd make sure you have everything perfectly lined up in that store. You'd make sure you have the sidewalk swept out front. Wouldn't you? It's no different in a big company. And it requires, in our case, 155,000 people with that kind of accountability and commitment to get it done. Because today we have competition everywhere on this planet. And most of our competition are not in this country. We basically have one competitor in the United States. And everybody else is offshore. And they all want our jobs. Just like we wanted their jobs years ago as America developed. All these developing countries around the world today want our jobs. That's the Walmart coming to Caterpillar and coming to America. So to me, it's around accountability. And one thing that really struck me, I had the great fun of working on an assembly line earlier this year, assembling the big D11 bulldozer, the largest bulldozer made in the world, up in Illinois. And I never worked in an assembly line in my life. I'm not a manufacturing person. I'm not an engineer. I've been in plants everywhere in the world. I never worked there. So I showed up that morning. I got up there they showed me what to do and told me what to do. And these are big, huge fabrication and weldments and heavy stuff. And so I was assembling a rubber exhaust tube from the engine exhaust to the smokestack on the D11. There's a clamp. Of course, I'm not used to this. And I dropped the clamp. And I thought, well, no problem, except I looked right down, and it just missed going inside the turbo, which if it would have gone in the turbo would have been a massive deconstruction of that turbocharger, hours and hours of delay. And if I would have had a bad day, I said to myself, I probably just would have let that go. Wouldn't have told anybody. Nobody would have known it. So the machine starts up in test, throws that clamp right through the turbocharger, and guess what happens? $10,000 repair or more. And I said right then to myself, my God, these are important jobs in this factory. And I've been talking about that internally ever since. The second thing was safety. I was scared to death I was going to hurt somebody. Because I was walking around things, and huge, heavy things with overhead cranes. And I wasn't, these guys they're like angels with this stuff, you know. And I thought, that's enough for me. But it really impressed upon me accountability in a factory worker job, how important those are to a company like Caterpillar. So I've kind of been on almost that rant since I did that earlier this year. It really helped me. But it's all about accountability. At any level, on any job, whether it's insurance or tractor assembly or you name it. I really think that's a critical one. And I've been working on that one. What do you think?
You know, well, it's hard to answer after Doug did. I always say, how do you follow that? Doug, we brought Jim Collins into the Hero meeting a few years ago. And Jim Collins describes in his book, and this is not because you should go read this book or a cliche, but it's really along the lines of what Doug just said. And we talk about integrity and excellence and commitment and teamwork. He describes a scene where a sculptor is working on a sculpture, and he's spending just as much time on the back side of the sculpture as the front. And he's asked, so why are you spending as much time on the back as the front when nobody's ever going to see the back? And he said, because I'm going to know what's on the back. And it's really kind of to Doug's point. You know, we want the work, I want my work to be just as good for me as it is for everybody else that's going to see it. And if you kind of think in those terms, you know, it's not like, oh, it's just good enough. It's got to be good enough for yourself, and that's kind of the personal accountability.
Yeah,
you just can't you've got to put the best stuff out all the time. All the time.
A little bit off the question, but another one, it's similar. A question I get all the time from people is, what keeps you up at night? the big CEO question, I guess. What keeps you awake at night? Well, not much, fortunately. And I'll tell you why that is. The heaviest obligation I feel on my shoulders is to make sure that this company is here 100 years from now. Because over the last 100 years, there have been how many ever CEOs at Caterpillar that have given me this wonderful, absolutely fantastic company to manage. And so I'm looking out for 10 and 20 and 30-year decisions much more than I am every quarter earnings or the day-to-day stock price. Now, I watch all that, and we have to worry about all that. But the heaviest weight I feel is when we put that plant in Athens, is that the right thing for 20 years from now? Will it be there, and was that the right move? Because we just destructed a plant in Japan that we're going to do something else with, and was that the right move for that one? None of that has anything to do with a 1 or 2 or 3 year decision. And that, to me, is the biggest obligation on a CEO, is to make sure the right pieces and bets and chess moves are made for 2 or 3 generations. And I really take that one seriously, and I do wake up at night about that, is on some of the big things we talk about, is that really the right thing to do? Anyway, those probably more than you want, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much for your insight. My name is India Pinder, and I'm a senior business management and public relations double major here at the university. And you mentioned earlier that your corporate values are excellence, integrity, teamwork, and commitment. And I just wanted to know, as you expand into the Athens area, how you plan to uphold those values and reach some of your strategic goals.
Can I start? Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, when we interview people, we have a very specific approach to interviewing. And as Doug said, you know, we already know your grade points. We already know people's resumes. And so when we interview people, we ask questions. We don't say, hey, do you have good values? You know, if I were to interview Brian and said, Brian, do you have good values? Of course he would have good values. We ask questions about, tell us about conflict in a work group. Tell us about when you were on a team and what role you played. Because we're trying to find out, have you demonstrated those values through the interview process? And so all of our questions are focused on previous experience. And then we really try to reinforce it in the workplace, that we're really serious about just what Doug said, personal accountability and integrity and excellence and teamwork. You can't have good results without those good values. So when we go through the hiring process, we're trying to find, obviously, the right technical ability, the right level of intelligence, et cetera. But we really want to understand that person as a person to make sure when we invest in them that they're going to be a productive employee for a long period of time. Doug?
Yeah, exactly. That's good. And I would say what we will apply to Athens is exactly the same process we are just applying to Nanjing, China, where we're opening a plant, Chengdu, where we're opening a plant, Sao Paulo, where we're opening a plant, Victoria, Texas, where we just opened a plant, and on and on and on. It's the same set of rigorous way in which we bring people in and then provide constant training. Because the one thing that I found going around the world, and I think I've been in something like close to 80 countries, and for our people, anybody for that matter, but people really want to know what the playing field is. Is it level or is it tilted one way or another? Which way do I have to play the game? And we have found in new plants, whether it's Athens or China or Bangalore, India, that when we lay out our 4 values and we provide a lot of training and we hire, like Ken has talked about, we have a lot better buy-in from our employees, and it works great. But we really try to work on that level playing field. And whether the new plant, if you go to Athens, you'd see our values up there. We just had them in Victoria, Texas 2 weeks ago when we cut the ribbon. You see them there. And wherever you walk in one of our facilities, they're everywhere, as you kind of mentioned. And that's critical because of the level playing field. And people like that. And Americans really like it. But guess what? We found, and I've seen it with my own eyes, everybody else likes it too. Nobody likes a world in a corrupt world, where in other places there's other ways you get ahead. Maybe family history, for example. If your name isn't such and such in Europe sometimes, or elsewhere, not to pick on Europe, but the level, the playing field is different. And we really work hard on that.
Please join me in thanking Mr. Oberhelman and Mr. Adams.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I have a scholarship for my daughter? No, sorry. You're going to get a building for your daughter.
On behalf of the Institute of Leadership Advancement and the Terry College of Business, I want to again thank Mr. Oberhelman and Mr. Adams for their time here today. Also, thank you to our distinguished guests and all the audience for coming today. The next Terry Leadership Speaker Series will be on November 9th with Ms. Lori Goldman of Spanx. Thank you.